Hey everybody, Victor here. Let's go ahead and get started with the nation guide for Bengal. Now for those of you who don't play in India, you start off as a Sunni nation, and unlike a lot of other Sunni nations, you have a little bit of a different estate. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that. If you notice, you don't have dhimmi, which means you don't have the usual grant dhimmi the privilege and not convert them. However, you do have that exact thing under the Brahmins. You can give them the exact same thing, except here it's with the Dharmic group, which means Hindu and Buddhist, so that'll fall under them. Meaning you can't convert them, but they won't penalize your religious unity. And if you want to know what religious unity does, it's right here. Basically unrest, stability cost, yearly corruption. So the longer that stays, the bigger the problem it is. This will remove those penalties, but you can't convert anything. You also don't get any other benefits from not converting them. Whereas with the other Sunni nations, with the dhimmi, you can get increased taxes and you can get increased manpower out of them, which is a nice thing to have, meaning you're usually going to be better off long-term converting. Let's go ahead and go back to the estates. What I recommend that you do is what you see here. Of the Brahmin legitimacy to rule, which will decrease the religious unity problem, give you more tolerance, which will reduce the unrest problem with Hindus. You have the religious state for the admin points, loyalty, and then enforce unity of faith, which will help you convert. There is another one in here, but I'll get to that in a minute. Then you have the primacy of the emirs, right of council, supremacy of the crown, that's normal. You have, for the Jains are the traditional merchant class without the diplo point. You can't get the diplo point there. So you're going to be less potential diplo than anyone in Europe. So be aware of that. But you do have this instead. So you have development cost minus 5% and state maintenance down a quarter. Meaning you'll save some money, but realistically you'll be better at deving, which is a very nice thing to have considering the fact your land here is not great. So you'll be able to dev a little bit easier. So I recommend taking that. And then you have the indebted to the Jains, which will give you about 450 ducats. Very nice thing to have. And monopoly on paper. This will give you about 35 ducats, but it mainly gives you the mercantilism, and it doesn't really impact your income. You can take the Jain indebtedness later for the loans. You don't need it right away, but it's typically useful right away. So it's up to you whether or not you take it later when you actually need it or not. So let's go ahead and move on to the last one here, the Rajputs. The Rajputs give you a special unit type. If you grant this one, which is established the regiments, this other one right here is just for loyalty. Once you've established this, you can also establish this one, Endless Purbius. Here's the problem. This gives you increased fire damage. A great thing to have late game. Don't give it out until you hit about Tech 14. Before Tech 14, you do not do enough fire damage to justify losing the crown land here. And you absolutely do almost no damage early on. And these units are solely infantry. Why are these so important though? They also have a couple of other bonuses, namely they have 5% more morale than traditional infantry. However, if you look at the estate privilege, it says it gives you 10% at the start. It's based on the amount of crown land, so you want to make sure the Rajputs maintain some crown land, otherwise you will have no force limit for these guys. So be sure to try and give them crown land to make sure that this stays high. The more you can get these guys, the better. So I'm going to go ahead and start just by hiring 2 of them. The last privilege that I would recommend talking about here, that I would recommend, is expansionist zealotry. You are a Sunni nation in India. Now if you look, there is a line of Sunni nations here, meaning it's not going to be useful to attack them with. And there's also the Batmanis down here, and Malwa and all them. But all of these guys here, you will get another big bonus of morale in order to fight them. Meaning that if you choose to attack Orissa early, and you're going to, having it is useful. It is absolutely useful. However, you can choose to wait on Orissa, and if you're going to, you're likely going to attack Jaunpur first. Or Sirhind first. Meaning it's going to be a problem for you. So make a choice, but once you go in on Orissa, make sure to remember to at least grant this at that point. Because it'll give you 5% more morale. Now, if you look at it, what it specifically says is when at war with them. It's not going to help you if you're not at war with them. So When you do this, make sure you're going to get into a fight with somebody that is in the Hindi religious group, which, over here, and you're going to let that war continue while you're at war with somebody in the Sunni group. This will give you the 5% bonus because you are still at war with somebody in the other religious group. Let's go ahead and move on to the military. Take your 2 stacks here, move them to Nadia here. Pretty sure I'm not going to pronounce these right, so just roll with it. In terms of a general, make your ruler into a general. If he is garbage like this, go ahead and recruit a normal general. You don't necessarily need any kind of pips on this for the early part, but I recommend it. You make this guy a general because if you look, he is above average, and that's nice, but your heir is a lot better, and he will take over in 1 year. So, yeah, get him on the throne and focus on military power. You're going to want the military power early. Now, as I said before, I'm recruiting the 2 infantry. Go ahead and recruit the rest of your force limit or hire mercenaries. If you want to hire the free company instead, feel free. If you want to save your money, you can do that too. But I would recommend you hit your force limit as quickly as possible. And with that, your military setup, your navy, combine your fleets, hire an admiral. It's going to be easier for you if you hire an admiral. You don't necessarily need to have one. Keep them together. Don't send off your light ships yet. You're going to want them early. Lastly, leave your merchants alone. These are honestly probably the best you have to increase your income. You can move them later once you start taking land, but until then, don't touch them. So let's go ahead and talk about rivals and diplomacy. You will usually see, no matter what, you will almost always see Juanpur and Orissa. These guys are almost always going to rival you. There's not a whole lot you can do. In the 60 to 70 times I've loaded this up and practiced it, just to make sure I know what I'm talking about, they've rivaled me every single time. The only time I've not seen Juanpur rival you, or rival me, is in another YouTuber's video. Meaning that if you are reloading, trying to get that to be the event that you play in, you are going to be reloading a very long time. It is a very low chance. Vijayanagar will rival you probably about a third to half the time. So this, however, is not the end of the day. A big deal. So if they do rival you, you are still fine. It only makes it so you have to ally a different person and makes the Orissa War slightly different. And I mean that very, very slightly. Now let's go ahead and talk about allies, because that is probably the biggest section here to make sure you have a good start out in the first 20 years of Bengal. If you look at your allies, these guys are pretty much going to be stock standard. Every so often, Andhra here will be even. In other words, they are not willing. They are exactly 32 against allying you and 32 for allying you. If you are rival to Vijayanagar, they start off allied to them. They will never ally you. The reason why that's important is because Andhra here has a core on Orissa. You also have a core on Orissa, meaning that if you end up allying them, and you can do that, by the way, just by scornfully insulting Orissa on day one, they will come in on promise of land, and you can tag team and pincer Orissa in a day one fight. Not difficult at all. However, there is one other ally that you can traditionally find if you look to the north, and that's Chagatai. Ally Chagatai because between them and their vassal Yarkhan, that's about 20,000 troops. Are they going to be very useful early on? No. You will get favors relatively quickly, but more importantly, they will stop people from attacking you. Go ahead and insult Orissa if you want. I would recommend doing so because, honestly, it's more power projection, which will be more morale of armies. So, do it. Or insult Jaunpur. Whichever one you choose, just go ahead and scornfully insult them. In this case, I'm going to scornfully insult Jaunpur, because this will let me unpause for a day and ally Malwa. You're going to have to make a choice with Malwa most of the time. You can either ally them or Gujarat because they will traditionally rival each other. In this case, they didn't, meaning I can ally both, which is a very nice thing to have. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Your next allies realistically are a choice. And what I mean is you have one that I'm going to recommend you ally, one or the other. But the other one you can either ally Patna here in case they want Orissa's land, which they might come in on promise of land, but they're not needed. Or you can ally Gujarat here, which I'm going to absolutely do, but I'm not doing it now. The other one I would recommend you choose is either Sirhind or Delhi. There are downsides to both, and it really is going to depend on your choice here that your strategy may change. So I'll start with Sirhind. To ally Sirhind, you cannot support their independence because they don't think you can reach them or Delhi, because Jaunpur is in your way. And that is obviously a big problem. If they end up rebelling and Jaunpur is allied to them because they actually declared an independence war, they will not ally you. Just like Andhra down here, they won't do it, meaning Jaunpur just got that much stronger. The problem with this is that since you can't support independence, you have to wait for them to declare independence via event. This will mean that they will declare their fight as a reconquest war, not having any allies, meaning they will be willing to ally you mid-fight. Because as long as you are not in an offensive war, they will do so. And that will give you an ally that is very strong, that will end up taking out Delhi because it has nothing but cores on them, with a 3-star general and about 14,000 troops. However, if you ally Delhi, you can take on Sirhind, make them very thankful for you, give you about 20 to 30 favors, and they will take out their cores on Sirhind, meaning they get very strong and have about 30,000 troops. So both have very, very positive things going for them. Here's the downsides. If they are Sirhind and they take over Delhi, they will form Delhi and all of Sirhind's cores vanish. If you do it as Delhi, they don't go anywhere. Meaning that if you end up having to fight Delhi and you punch up to here, there will be a Sirhind core you can release and reconquer all of Sirhind's land for cheaper. Very nice thing to have. However, with Delhi, they have another problem. Sirhind's not their only vassal. And Bangladesh here can be supported by Jaunpur. And if they are, while you are fighting Sirhind, Bangladesh can also fight Delhi. If they declare at the exact same time, it can absolutely happen. Meaning, all of a sudden, Delhi is being pincered on both sides. Not a good thing to happen. I have actually had it fire about twice. So be careful on what you pick, but I would recommend picking them. The reason why is Delhi has these cores, and either Sirhind will come in on promise of land, allowing you to pincer Jaunpur, or Delhi will come in and you'll have enough favors where you don't even have to promise them land. So now that I've talked enough about how you do this, I would honestly recommend most of the time allying Delhi. It is simply the safer bet. While they will have a 3-star general in Sirhind, it is easier to fight them if you know how to properly reinforce and make it so you don't suffer any of the real casualties than having to fight anybody else. So you'll be fine. Now Orissa is the person you're fighting first. So I'm going to go ahead and spend my time insulting Orissa so I can get that power projection up. And embargoing them and all that once I want to. But I now have my army ready to go, my navy ready to go. I'm going to move these guys over. Oh, need to wait for my Rajputs. But beyond that, I'm good. And I will show you the exact same strategy I've shown you guys before. In case you guys haven't noticed it, I will show you the whole walkthrough. If you go down here, you'll notice what it is. Yeah, the AI is dumb. It is very dumb. It does the exact same thing in a lot of situations. And a lot of people tend not to notice. So, as is before, wait until about the 26th of December. Move your troops over. They will arrive about on the 1st. Which realistically is close enough. Wait until, I believe it's the 31st. No, it's 2 days. So, the 30th. And then they'll arrive on the 1st. And as long as your troops are not both on the border and your ships are out, they tend to not actually activate this fort. And there we go. Now I'm ready to take on Orissa. They will not have allies because they don't have any slots. Meaning it is a roughly even fight. They have more eventual manpower. But I declare, and I rush. Now, if you pay attention, as is per the norm, they activate the fort, your troops stop. So be sure to click. Take your mercenaries, drop them here, or your reinforcements if you actually train troops. Move on to the fort. For those of you who haven't seen this before, this is a smash-in. Just go in here, go into the siege, blast open the fort. You need 5 more, so give me a second. There we go. And you can assault this. As long as they have less than 100 troops in the garrison, when you assault, it is 1 day. And it's done. And at this point, it's simply a rush to see if I will end up having to actually fight Orissa, or if I can run north and take on Surhind. They don't want it to peace out at this moment because I haven't done enough, but I'm simply going to move my troops over and engage them on their own capital. This is why I said again, you really don't need a whole lot because you are massively outnumbering them, and as long as you properly reinforce, you should be fine. Because here, I'm taking on 13,000 with 21. Might be their fort, might be crossing a river, but I should win this. Got close, but I won it. Now here, I simply waiting for that fort to fall, and then I can rush north to actually help Delhi. If you are worried about Delhi falling, like they are right now, having a bit of problem, you can hire more mercenaries. I don't need to at this point, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the recording. I'm going to pause it, and then I'm going to get done with Orissa, head north, and take on Surhind. And I'm going to bring you guys back once that is done so I can show you what to do after these initial fights so you guys can expand further. But while you are doing this, I will tell you now, because I'm sure there's going to be somebody that eventually is trying to do this while they're watching. Take your time and start getting your claims on these guys up here, the smaller guys, but also on Juanpur. You do not have a way of declaring on Juanpur for land at this point, and you need one. Beyond that, just simply waiting. If you want, you can get a spy network on Orissa, but to help you speed it up, you realistically don't need it. So I'll see you guys in a few minutes. And welcome back, everybody. So, Delhi has now pretty much stomped Surhind. It did take me losing my Grand Company because they walked into it and stack wiped it while I was stuck on a fort. But that's about it. Didn't really take much in terms of manpower or really money. Then Delhi went, and they will almost immediately go after Kashmir, like every single time. Here's the problem, and I wanted to point this out. Bangladesh here will almost always get supported by Jaunpur. Almost always. And they will be stopped because they are in the middle of a fight with either Surhind or with Kashmir. They just pieced out with Kashmir. When that happens, pause. If you made it to 1450 and you've been focusing on Mill, you should have just been able to embrace Tech 4. Meaning you should have the advantage on Jaunpur for a little bit. On top of that, if you've actually been working on this, Malwa, Delhi, and Chagatai will all come in. And if you look at this fight, yeah, it's definitely in your favor. And here's the thing. Delhi, they absolutely want land out of Jaunpur. They absolutely want it. You have 36 favors with them. You're going to call them in, and when you peace out, you can get whatever you want, and I would recommend you actually mark the territory here as you wanting it, because then they'll flip it to you, and they will largely handle the fight, give it to you, and not care. And that's it. Now Jaunpur is about to be broken, and I mean hard. Gujarat will not come in on this fight. They just never seem to want to. So don't expect that. What they are good for, and what Malwa is really good for, is Jharkhand here tends to ally Mewar. A lot. Meaning if you go after them, you're likely to also have to fight Mewar. And Gujarat will usually want to come in for that, and Malwa will also usually want to come in for that, because they will want land out of Mewar. Meaning that if you need to expand here and they're over there, these two will usually come in for their land. Meaning they'll take care of this, and hopefully other allies, making it a favorable fight for you at least. So again, I'm going to go ahead and fight this to show you basically where you will stand at the end of this fight. And during this point, while you're stomping Jaunpur, once you start piecing out their allies, you can absolutely take Sirhind off the map, absolutely take Multan off the map if you really want. Or you can leave them there just because. And I would recommend, now, leaving them as one province minors, because then Jaunpur will not find new allies. They will be stuck with Mewat, who is this little guy, Sirhind, who is this little guy, and Multan, who really is not a good ally. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it. I'll see you guys in a little bit. And welcome back. So, war's over. Didn't actually have any battles myself. I ended up recruiting another couple men just to help me siege things down. I only sieged down these two forts and kind of ran around and occupied. And it's over. Meaning I can now do this. I can go in, take all the land I want. And I would recommend, if you can, if you end up winning this fight, which you really shouldn't have a problem with, focus on these two forts. Jaunpur and however you pronounce this. It's for this very simple fact that, well, yeah, if you take these two, the only other fort they have is up here on a border. That doesn't stop you from doing anything. So by taking this one and this one, you've made it so you can easily just walk through, blitz them down, and be done with it. And that's it. War's won. And as you can see, nobody wants any land because they all came in on promise of favors, not land. Take all the money you can, even though you're probably going to be getting less than half because you didn't really do anything. And if you want to have a lot of fun with them, try and border gore them, because now they can't touch these two provinces. So you can do that if you want, but yeah. Done. No coalition as of yet, though they will absolutely not like you. You have now reached the point where you're probably as large as Vijayanagar. As you can see, you're going to have a lot of admin, so whether you tech up like I did or you wait is up to you. You can also focus the development out of here and into your lands if you really want to, meaning you're going to have a very tall capital. But then after this, up in here, you're spreading into here. If you look at the religious mode, you'll understand what you're doing. You're expanding into the Hindu lands, and then into the Sunni lands, and then into Theravada, and Vajrayana, and then into Hindu, and then Sunni, and then Theravada and Vajrayana. You are having 4 separate expansion directions because they're different religions. They're not going to care what you're doing to each other. And if you look at the cultures, they also tend to shift drastically into different culture groups very quickly, depending on your direction you're going. So if you punch into Jaunpur, they're not going to mind as much when you're also pushing into Orissa, or into Tibetan lands, or down here into Burmese lands. And then the religion compounds that. Meaning you have 4 very easy expansion paths. Up here and down here are the easiest. Be aware, though, that eventually if you push in these 2 directions, you're going to have these guys blocking you in. So you're going to have to take a lot more of these lands in the long run. So don't take non-co-belligerated land, especially over here. Because you need a big enough expansion here so you can take on Ming. And once Ming is weak by taking the reforms, that's when you attack. You wipe out their armies and just start punching into them. Over and over and over again. And you do this, just so you are aware, you take the expansion down here till you're roughly bordering their tributaries. So you take down to Pegu, Lana, Hisweni, all that. And you push up to Sang, so you can attack Kham, beat Ming, take money, break them a little bit. Then you attack Ayutthaya, break them a little bit, take money. To Eklanjang, break them, take money, over and over and over again by attacking their tributaries. And then go to Khmer, and then to Kampa, and then to Dai Viet, and just keep attacking the Ming until they bankrupt. You will eventually cause them to shatter. And once that happens, you have an absolutely free game as Bengal for all of India and all of China, and then sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want at that point. And with that, you guys should be more than capable of playing Bengal and having a really fun time. If you guys like this guide, like and subscribe. I will be making more like it. If you have a specific nation you want me to make, by all means, put it in a comment below. More than happy to make it. You can also join my Discord. The link is in the description. I'd love to have you in the community, but I also take the list of what I'm going to be making. It's available on there so you can see it, but I'll also be posting videos in there so you'll get the notification there first to try and get those keys that I've been posting up. And if you haven't noticed it yet, yes, I am doing it. I'm doing it, and I'm not saying anything because I want you guys to actually be looking when I put them up. Other than that, thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a great day.